Welcome to the Virtual Coffee Lab. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about 4 skills that every home coffee roaster needs in order to roast really good coffee. This video is for the person that is interested in roasting coffee and is trying to understand what all is involved, but it's also a great video for those that have roasted for a while and just kind of want to get back to the basics. I'll call it a reset of sorts. And even us that have been roasting longer, that have kind of seemed to figure things out, this is a good refresher, a reminder to talk about these skills. So here are the 4 essential skills that every home coffee roaster needs to use to roast great coffee. The first is understanding coffee roasting events and how that fits in with the timeline of the total roast. Coffee roasting events like the charge event, the dry event, first crack, and drop. And we'll talk about that because we're going to be doing a full roast today and talking about each of these 4 skills. The second essential skill is heat management, how we apply heat over time throughout the total timeline of the roast. This is a really important topic. This is one of the biggest factors and problems that people experience when we roast coffee and their results are kind of mediocre. They're not really happy with the results. The third is using our senses while the roast is going on. We'll talk all about that during the roast. And then lastly, charting our roasts, documenting the information that we roast. Every 30 seconds, writing down our time, our temperature, and our events, and our power settings and fan settings. We'll talk about that while we do the roast as well. So we're going to put all this together into a roast. There is going to be a lot going on, so this is the type of video that you can watch more than once if you want. I'm going to be roasting today using the Roast SR540. It's a fluid bed air roaster, very popular. I've had this for several years. I have the extension tube. If you are a drum roaster, the concepts, these essentials that I'm talking about, they apply to you as well, and I would encourage you to stick around. Okay, so we're going to be roasting 180 grams of a Guatemalan Huehue coffee. I love this coffee. I've roasted it a lot here on this channel. It's a great coffee to start with. We're going to be going towards the darker notes, so I'm going to be going for a medium dark roast. We're taking this coffee all the way to the very edge of where second crack begins before we drop the coffee. I do have some roasting goals that I'll share with you. I want to have a total roast time on this fresh roast of about 8.5 minutes. I'm looking for about a 3-minute dry time. So from the time I hit the start button until the coffee turns yellow, I want that time period to be about 3 minutes. I don't really want to go much faster than that. I want to have a 3.5 minute middle phase or Maillard phase. This browning phase is a time where there's a lot of flavor development that takes place. And so that speed, that quickness, that time on the timeline that we spend in this portion of the roast is going to influence what we taste in the cup. Time to first crack is an influencer in what we taste in a cup. And then ultimately, 2 minutes in development, maybe a little bit longer, is where I want to be for the last from first crack till I drop the coffee, ending just when second crack begins. And on the fresh roast, that's going to be over 500 degrees, 510 to 520 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'll try to include Celsius on the screen as well. All right, for heat management, you'll notice that I'm starting with a 9 and a 4 on the screen. So the number on the left is my airflow, and for a fluid bed roaster, we want to be able to get bean movement in the beginning of the roaster. If I keep the bean movement low in the beginning of the roast, then all that hot air that is trying to make its way through the bean mass is going to just basically cook the bottom of the bean mass. And that's not something that we want. That's not a good thing. We want to get the beans moving so the air flows through the beans and not being blocked by the beans. So I need enough airflow. So I'm going to start with full air just to get the beans moving, and then as the roast progresses, we'll make adjustments. The second number is the power number. Number 4 is where I'm starting on the fresh roast, and then I'm going to be working my way up as we progress in the roast. So we start out with a higher temperature in the beginning of our roast on a drum roaster and with increased power, and then we lower our power and increase our fan for airflow and convection. But on an air roaster, we do the opposite. So here I am, high airflow, low power setting for our heat, and let's get started. Okay, this is the charge event. This is the first event. Is the charge event important? It is if you're trying to figure out a temperature to start with. For me here on the fresh roast, you'll see I turn the knob, you'll see the temperature start to display, and immediately we have hot air that is just instantly being applied to these beans. So in a sense, it's like putting in a hot roaster when you start out the roasting process. You'll see I have really good bean movement, and that's again a goal that I want to be sure that's taking place here with this roast. I don't want the beans to be bouncing all the way up to the very top of the roasting chamber. That's not a good thing because sometimes the beans will want to go into the chaff collector at the top of this roaster. We don't want to do that. So we've got some good bean movement, and I'm watching the timeline. We're almost approaching a minute here, and I know we've got good bean movement. I'm also watching my temperatures because I have a plan to be at the dry event at a certain time. So I'm monitoring my fresh roast temperatures that I'm very familiar with so that I can time the event, so that I can get to the event at the time that I want. So I'm making power adjustments, or fan adjustments, I'm sorry, and I've just lowered the fan, and you'll see this continue. When you lower the fan, it lowers the bean mass flow, and that holds more heat underneath the beans, which creates temperature increases. So here we are. Now we're a minute and 45 seconds into the roast. We're halfway to the dry event. Watch the bean color because it's already starting to change. You'll see it brightens up a little bit, and then it starts to have kind of this a little bit of a green, like gets brighter green, and then starts to become a darker green that turns into kind of a yellowish tone, and then ultimately works its way to yellow, and you'll see that event take place here in just a minute. So we've already lowered the fan setting 1 notch, and we're at 380 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's pretty good. We are definitely on our way. I'm looking at the color. So between using my senses, my sight, watching the beans, the way that they are being lofted, watching the color, I'm starting to smell, instead of wet grass, I'm starting to smell a little bit of sweetness coming, and I know we're really close to the dry event. I'm watching the color. I'm looking to make sure there's no green left before I call dry, and I think we're just about there. And yes, the dry event is there, and I'm making an adjustment, and I lowered my I lowered my fan setting so that we have bumped up one more step towards increasing the heat for this roast. You'll watch the temperatures climb and then they stall a little bit, climb and then they stall a little bit. That's normal with the fresh roast. It's very hard to have a consistently increasing bandwidth unless you just cranked on the power. So this is just the way that it is. Now look at the bean color here. It's gone from yellow and it's already starting to brown, and we're only 30 seconds past the dry event. So that is really interesting to see. All right, I'm getting ready to make another change. I'm dialing through the different settings, and here we are with a setting of 6 for our air. That is even lower. Again, I have not increased the power, heat power, but I have decreased the fan. And look at the temperatures. You know, just 30 seconds ago we were at 380, now we're at 411. So we're definitely headed in the right direction, but I don't want to do this too fast. I'm smelling the coffee, the initial yeasty, kind of sweet and yeasty smell that was happening right around the dry vent is now starting to go away, and I'm just getting a little bit of like cookies. It's like baking cookies is what I'm smelling here in the roaster. I'm watching the color very carefully because the color and the temperature are helping me get this coffee to get to the first crack event, which is our next event, and that's going to take place at 6 minutes and 30 seconds. That's a minute and 45 seconds, a minute and 40 seconds away right now, and I don't want to get there too soon. I want this time in flavor development to have to be 3.5 minutes. That is my goal for this roast. The bean loft, we've lowered the fan settings several times already, and the beans are still bouncing and flying just as high as they were earlier in the roast. And the reason why is because we are losing moisture in the beans. And so I'm using my sight, my senses, to be able to watch the bean loft, which helps me understand moisture is leaving the beans are lofting higher, and this is another clue that I need to adjust my power or my fan setting. All right, so here we are. We're really flying 430 degrees, and we're about a minute away, a little less than a minute away from first crack. So I'm smelling, and just before first crack, you should start to smell maybe a little bit of a kind of a sharp note. I've noticed it to be kind of vinegary is a note that you might smell, and I'm listening for any sort of snaps or cracks. I've lowered my fan again because now I want to be sure that I'm going to hit first crack in time. You'll notice that I am using the timer from my phone. I didn't mention this. I think I should point this out. I'm paying attention to the timeline here with my timer, and I'm just using the standard stopwatch. So you're going to see first crack called here in just a second, and I'm going to hit the lap button on my timer, and that is going to indicate, there it is, my first crack event. So this is really important. We're on track. I met my goal. I was a little bit late on my goal. I think I wanted 3.5 minutes, and we got more like 3 minutes and 40 seconds, that's fine. I'm still happy with that. And now our next goal is to be able to get the temperatures up to a point where the coffee is going to get darker and darker, and I want to drop this coffee before second crack starts. I'm making more adjustments here, and so now I've got a power setting of 6 and a fan setting of 2, and I'm still under 500 degrees, but I'm only a minute into the development phase. Well, what's the purpose of the development phase? The development phase is it's the phase that helps us kind of balance the coffee out. It helps us roast some of the acidity out of the coffee, and ultimately it helps us get the color where we want the color to be. And again, I'm looking for a medium dark coffee. We're at 8 minutes right now, and I'm making another adjustment. I've lowered it down to a fan setting of 1 and a power level of 6, and the beans are still bouncing around. So even on the lowest fan setting, the beans have really lost a lot of moisture, and moving around quite well. Okay, so now I'm listening. First crack has pretty much weaned off, and I'm getting very close to second crack. I've got the gloves on. I'm turning on my cooling fan, and here we go. I'm going to get this coffee out and into the cooling fan, and this is where I end the roast. Bam. We have started the cooling process for this coffee. I've got a tray, which you'll see here, that is going to help me cool this coffee very quickly. And just when I dropped this coffee, I was starting to hear some really high-pitched snaps. That's the beginning of second crack. So we made a lot of changes to the heat and the fan, which ultimately influence the timeline, how fast we move through the coffee roasting process. And we intentionally control the speed of that process through the roast so that we can craft great coffee. This is one of the biggest failures that home coffee roasting enthusiasts fall into, is they rush to first crack. They don't spend enough time in this middle phase, and they miss out on some of the flavor development. Taking a look at these beans, they're definitely hinging towards the darker side. So I weigh the beans out at a 16.9% weight loss, which basically it's 17%, and that's very close to the goal that I wanted. Now we're going to put the coffee under the light meter just to confirm that this falls into the category of a medium dark. And there you go. Definitely a medium dark coffee. I'm really happy with this result. I was able to get really close to my event time goals that I had set, and I did that because I managed my heat to time the roasting events to take place when I wanted them to. And this is how we craft great coffee. This is something that takes some practice, but once you start to get the hang of it and pay attention to how your heat and air settings influence the speed of your roast, then you have a great opportunity to be able to craft a profile and execute it and get some really good results. Okay, so then it comes to charting the roast. Here you're going to see my roast plan, and you're going to see my temperatures all written down on this coffee roasting worksheet. I have this same worksheet available for free download. If you're interested, I'll have a link in the description. It's on my Buy Me a Coffee page. It's free, and you can download that and use that for a worksheet. And there's been thousands of downloads of that worksheet, and it's helped quite a few people in their roasting hobby. So I would encourage you to do that. Now comes for the taste, and I've already tasted this coffee. So I did this roast earlier in the week, and I was able to taste the coffee, and it's definitely a very dark coffee. I'm normally in the medium light to medium roast realm for my coffee preference, and this coffee is dark. It does have a bite to it. There is a really deep chocolate note that is in here that just kind of fills the mouth. There is maybe kind of like a molasses kind of a note. So it's not like sugar sweetness, but it's definitely like a dark sweetness. There's body. It's a very drinkable, enjoyable, comforting coffee. So I would encourage you to check this out. I would love to hear your comments about the roasting process. If you have questions about getting into roasting, you can ask those questions here. I'll do my best to help answer them. And if there's something that I did during this roast that you have questions about or you want to make a comment about, I would love to hear that as well. And for those roasters out there that are more seasoned, that have been doing this for a while, what do you think about the 4 essential skills that I've been talking about here? Do you think that these are required for you to roast great coffee? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I appreciate you being here today. If you like what you've seen, hit the like button and always subscribe. When I put out new videos, you'll be the first to be notified. And I hope you have a great week roasting. We'll see you next time.